I've been receiving a steady stream of people asking me my opinion on the different kinds of development that has been happening in product management in the age of AI. And that goes from, people who are making commentary about the dynamic that is changing now that AI supposedly have solved engineering problems. But also on the other side, you have people who are telling you that, product management can be massively automated now with AI tools and everything. And I think this is getting a lot of people with their head spinning, not really understanding about, where things are going in this very chaotic mess. So we're going to talk about this for a second. The thing that I find the most interesting in this entire, and frustrating in this entire conversations and topic, is that it seems that people have forgotten that what the real job of product management is. And the name is a bit treacherous, right? Management, but there is a complete other layer to it that is the most important part, in my opinion, about the product management side of the job. I talk about this in this nature in my book. I call it about, so if you want to go into the deep details, go get it, because I'm going to build upon what I wrote over there. But basically, there's a distinction between management and leadership. Management is to create predictable results. Leadership is to create excellence. The management side of things is heavy in processes and in step-by-step stuff and everything. Very prone for automation, very prone for, AI to actually do its stuff, etc. All the better, by the way. So this part tends to be what a lot of people think really is product management. They think you can, and this is not untrue, but that's not the entire picture either. That you can grab anybody, just teach them a couple of the steps, and you'll find so much content online about this. So I'm not going to be able to bring you anything of value, nor is the topic that I want to be covering in this video right now. So in this particular aspect, there's tons of techniques, tools, step-by-step schedules, and the list goes on. And then you just go through this, and pretty much anybody is going to have good results. This is the whole thing. You can create predictable results. I didn't say they're going to be amazing, but they're going to be predictable for sure. And then the leadership side of things is really where you're going to start actually trying to figure out the thing that no one else is figuring out. And now why I'm pointing this out is because in a world where AI becomes ubiquitous and you can start gaming things out a little bit, where all of that management aspect is being automated and made for $20 a month on an agent that's going to do all the work. Now, no one is going to have anything to actually differentiate themselves, right? Yeah, we're going to have, solve stupid problems that we're still having and seeing in many companies. But then what are you going to do? The thought leadership is really where things start to shine and come in. This is something that I went into the details in a recent video I made about Steve Jobs, because I see him as the epitome of the thought leader when it comes to product management side of things. I think there's a lot of mystification behind this part of the job, and a lot of people find peace in just labeling that scale as some sort of genius, and you put it behind a very iconic character like him, and you forget that just about anybody can actually get there. And you just have to want to do it. But as a mental exercise and a side note, if you find peace in thinking like, oh, but that's something just for exceptional people, then yeah, you're done. You're not going to try to harness this skill for yourself because it's just not for you, right? And that's a mistake. So in that video about Steve Jobs, what I was pointing out is that, which is relevant to this context, is that there's a lot of people who are trying to become the next Steve Jobs. What they want is they want the status of the person. They want to be adored, revered. They want to see themselves in panels. They want to see themselves talking about stuff. They just love that adulation kind of thing. Kind of as if they wanted to be movie stars, but they couldn't make it in Hollywood, so they find a nerdy version of it that would be a little bit more accessible, if you see what I mean. But the part that is being completely missed is that the man was tortured by really having this ability to anticipate what people truly wanted. And that has always been the job for product managers. I don't want to say it's the expectation, because there's so many tech companies who work in a function where they bring product managers and they just have them doing 99.9%, if not 100% of the pure management side of things, right? You just get your requests to come in because a lot of people are running businesses that just really, really, really love that predictable element to it. And that creates, good companies. Everybody makes money. The investors are happy. That does not create any revolutions, right? I mean, I named my book The Pirate Way, not to tell you like just another day at work. I'm trying to cultivate a mindset and people who are interested in pushing the boundaries. So that's why I'm a little bit, let's call it condescending about the pure management approach of things. I'll own up to it. But the leadership side is really where things starts to be exciting and interesting, and you can actually go into it. There's a ways to get to it. And that being always the job, AI isn't changing anything about that particular dynamic, because AI is not going to be capable of understanding the details or the nuances about why we as humans truly want. Because, I think I got to cover this. As a pure side note, you have to be going into your head that there's not going to be a world where AI is going to sell stuff to AI. At the end of the day, people are always going to be the customers, and we're going to be part of the economy. Otherwise, there's just no economy. So, right, put that to bed. So how do you actually get to this part, and why is AI so irrelevant into it, is where things starts to be very, very interesting. The thing that I find very important and why the Steve Jobs video is so relevant is that he is renowned for being extremely good at detecting signal in the noise. Now, there's so many different sources of noise, and this is a much, much broader topic, and I'm trying to make one video once in my life. It's not going to be 30 minutes. But it goes like this. Whenever you go to see an end user or a customer, and then you're trying to build something for them, there's an alignment. You want to build it, they want to buy it. They will always, as in, overwhelmingly most of the time, trying to compromise with what they think they want as a way of emphasizing and making it simpler and more easier for you to execute. And this is a significant noise creation element, but it's a positive one, because it's also a dead sign of engagement from the end user and the customer that they really want to get there. It's just that instead of drawing and giving you everything, they really are trying to amend and then build a bridge. In this context, you being able to understand what they really, really want behind the scene is that thought leadership exercise I'm talking about. So that, you can't have ChatGPT and saying to him like, hey, build me a red car. And then, understanding that, no, actually what you want is a white van. It's a very cartoonish characteristics, but sometimes it gets this cartoonish. So I'm going to give you a very, very simple example about where it goes. So let's say that you have a person who is going, or that represents a customer base that tends to commute 10 miles a day, and they're doing it by bus or walking. Hopefully not walking. And so this person comes into you and says, like, I would really, 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 really want a bicycle. Give me some freedom. Don't have to be on the schedule. Don't have to be packed in the bus. All the reason you can think of about what's happening. If you look at this and you start building a bicycle, that's the management side of things. Feedback was asking you for a bicycle. You build a bicycle. There you go. But what they really are asking for with distance of 10 miles and the exercise going, which you can't anticipate because you're supposed to know that riding a bike 10 miles a day is definitely not going to be for everybody. What they want is a car, right? Now, they may want to have something that is very affordable. They probably told you they wanted a bicycle because they wanted something quick, which is another data point. But ultimately, what they want is a car. You don't have to build a car from day zero and bring it to them, but that becomes your North Star. So what you can do right now is you can build a bicycle and then having in their mind the fact that, yeah, eventually you're going to ask me for a car, because the fundamental of the dynamics that you're in and the reason you wanted the bicycle in the first place are going to come and catch you right again once you're going to have a bicycle. That is an example, a very, very primitive example of the kind of thought leadership that you have to do. This is what Steve Jobs was doing everywhere. You could see it. You could really feel it when he was creating the iMac, the first generation iMac from 97. He really understood that people didn't want to have an ugly gray box of a, back then it was still like some were like horizontal desktop, some were vertical. No one really wanted this at home. People wanted to have an all-in-one that solved the entire thing, that looks cute, that is adorable and everything like this, etc. And he was on a mission not to address the people that were currently in place and buying PCs. He was in a place of selling a computer to all the people who didn't have a computer, right? Magnificent, brilliant element of product visionary thought leadership. So this exercise, I think by now you can really understand why AI cannot be doing it. And so if you as a product person, as a product manager, or even if you're an engineer, you're interested into this, you are trying to wrap your head around about what this is going on, you can already take it that that's actually the number one. These are the first takeaways. One, this is the real exercise you got to do. Two, you should already be doing this right now as a way of going into it. And then three, if you haven't been doing it right now, let's talk about how we can actually help you getting in there. The car example is one that is so cartoonish, is not going to give you the next steps. So let's go into it. Number one, there is a need to understand how much in your day-to-day, how much management you need in your function. It's never zero, but you would be extremely surprised about how little management you can get away with, depending on how healthy the dynamic with your team is. And I mean, I didn't plot this. I probably would do it. If I do a follow-up of the Pirate Way, I'll probably do like these kinds of plotting for the sake of it. But I always take that there's a direct correlation between the health of the dynamic of a company and how much structure and management is required for them to function. Now, this is rubbing so many people the wrong way because there is always someone somewhere who either cannot conceive a company running with very little management, or that has a story about how it saved their life before and that, now it's actually a requirement to actually start to get going. But, and I can't tell you why, I can tell you that it actually works with very little management. So the first thing is you got to be characterizing how much you need. Because suddenly what it's going to do is going to change your mind. You're going to start realizing like, no, I shouldn't be doing maximizing my day with management. I should minimize the amount of management in my day so I maximize with thought leadership. The higher you are in the scale of a company, the more important that is. Because at some point, someone, as the responsibility goes up, the duty of coming up with thought leadership rolls back up, someone is going to have to do that. Because otherwise, what you're basically turning yourself into is a contracting company, a consulting company. You work on statement of works only, which there's nothing wrong, but you're not going to revolutionize anything in this position. You're going to probably have a very good day, very good life, make good money, etc. Not the point of the topic in the conversation here. So that's the first thing. You do the scope. The second is that how do you go about the thought leadership? I kind of started with this with the Steve Jobs video. You need to actually identify the signal and the noise. And the way you get to it is when you sit down with that person and they tell you that they want a bicycle, what you need to understand is why do you want a bicycle? And they always start by telling you that, that they will respond to you because I don't want to take the bus. This is like, no, I heard that. This is why you cannot start saying like, yeah, but why do you want a bicycle right after they told you, I don't want to take the bus? You need to understand like, but what is it the problem that you don't like? This is interesting because the answer to the why starts with a lot of what. What is it that you don't like about the bus? What is it that you don't like about walking? Oh, if I walk, I'm going to be all sweaty and everything like this. Okay. It's very exhausting. Okay. I'm going to get cold the whole time when I'm going there. Okay. But if I take the bus, I have to wait for the schedule, all of these different things are starting to build in the why. Now I cherry pick these answers. I didn't make this up. I don't script anything, but I made these answers as a way of kind of hinting at the fact that being cold, being wet, being exhausted are things that are going to happen being on the bike as well for 10 miles. I mean, of course, if you're very fit, it's going to be a nothing burger, but this is not the place for flexing your athletic performances that I don't have. But anyway, this is kind of like where things starts to be interesting. You start understanding that the signal about really where things are going. And I start thinking like, yeah, but if I really wanted to solve all of these things this person is telling me they want to, a bike isn't going to cut it, right? So there is something after that. And that starts shaping your North Star. So as you identify more and more of this signal into the noise, you're going to start detecting a pattern. And I kind of hit at it into the whole bicycle conversation. Now, this pattern, when you understand it, is going to start drawing where your North Star is and where things are going. Another way, before I move on to the next day, which will be about timing. Another great way to look at this is that many times, you're going to be working in a situation, in meetings with your customer, where the person who truly knows how the job is done isn't in the room. In the robotics world where I work, it's very common that you have a blue-collar guy who does all the work, is massively ignored by absolutely everybody, the people in your team, the people on their team, and is like, basically given, hey, Jerry, here's the stuff. You do it this way. I, from the office, from HQ, I know exactly how you should do it, and you zip it. I encourage you to dismiss the flattering executive meeting and sit down with this person, because this person is the only one who truly knows what's going to happen. And what's going to be very interesting that you're going to get with this conversation is that, number one, they're a pool of knowledge that will always blow your mind. I do not remember a single conversation that was disappointing on this thing. They're like, it's baffling for me that they could be dismissed so much. And I think there's only two places in the world that I've visited where people made it an active effort, recognized and repeated to involve the blue collar staff as part of the design process of everything that they were doing. And no one ever complained about doing this. Right, bit of a side note. But when you sit down with this person, you're going to learn about how they do things today. And then what is going to be more interesting, the same with the bicycle, is you're going to understand why is it that they do things this way. And you're going to learn that, oh, we do it this way, even though it's stupid because I'm forced to do it this way. And this is when you're going to start asking this person's, throw some questions at them. Sometimes it's going to be stupid, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to establish boundaries of an element in the conversation, right? So it's like back into the bicycle example. You're going to be exhausted. Yeah, but how much is exhausted? How is it too much, too little? How is it too much? It's always a range of all of these different elements that you can consider as, criteria or KPIs or whatever. Same will go here. And this person is going to be able to tell you, like, we do it this way. This works. This doesn't work. This I can change. This I cannot change. If I could change, I would do it this way. This is what would be the ideal of where things are going. You do not have to listen to everything that they're doing verbatim. It doesn't have to become your direct product criteria, but you have to listen to everything that's being said because the signal is going to be in all that message. And this is really going to start crafting what's going on. Now, you could come around and say, like, yeah, but the signatory doesn't want to do any of these things. Today, the signatory doesn't want to do these things. But the thing with people who are actually doing the job is that they live in the fundamentals that are going to catching up with the reality of what you're trying to build, which means that the pain that they're living, the pain that is going to translate itself into an executive level report in performance, in efficiency, in costs, in revenue, and whatever you want. Always, systematically. The connection between the two is rarely done properly, but it always does. And so if you're capable of anticipating these things, the way you go around is a completely in return is that you deliver the things you know is going to work because you spoke to the person who actually does the work. And then this person, you're going to present that to the executive. I'm going into too much in the weeds, but I'm going to stop. You're going to present that to your stakeholder who's going to buy or the product. That person is going to go for 5 seconds because they have no idea what they're talking about most of the times, which is not their job to. I'm not trying to offend anybody, blah, blah, blah. They're going to go to that person who does the job, and this person is going to say, yeah, that's going to be a great idea. It's going to work. And now you have created your market fit. But this exercise of thought leadership is really as simple as this. You repeat, get your pattern, and then you actually get your North Star. Now, moving on to the last thing, which is really the timing. Now that you have an idea that you want your North Star, that you need to build a car, the question is that how are you going to get to build a car? There was a very, very interesting post on LinkedIn recently about explaining what an MVP is. And what I loved about this post, because it's another one of these Dodoy moments, but there's so much power in presenting things in a specific way. And I don't think I'm particularly good at this, but at least I'm trying. The way you phrase things, the one infographic design can suddenly completely trigger people into thinking of things the right way. And this person on the MVP side really was presenting, and the point is very quick, is an MVP is not a crappy version of your product. It can be a completely different product. And it goes directly to thinking about this whole mobility. I even think that the example was using a mobility, but it's tied with a skateboard, not with a bicycle. Your bicycle could be the MVP to your car, because in your product thought leadership, you're not here to create a car, you're here to create a solution to mobility. And that's the part that is actually very, very important and interesting to have, is that this is how you're going to start timing your path to the car. This is another element of thought leadership, and now what are going to be your milestones. Now, the element of time into this is going to be completely different. It's, let's say you do a bike first, then you do a motorcycle, then you do a small car, then you do a big car, right? So 4 steps. They don't take the same amount of time and effort to build. And very importantly, you may never get to build a car. Maybe you're going to build such a great bike company that you will be a bike company. And never forget that you're not what you say you are what you do, right? But there's nothing wrong with that. But you as a product person, you should have multiple car level end goals and paths ready to actually trigger that you can adjust on based on how the company is able to execute. Because where it's going to be extremely hard is for you to say, like, okay, so the bike is coming in a year, the rest is coming 2, 3, 4 years, all this stuff. This is going to be extremely, extremely hard in a direct function of your team's ability to execute. Now, AI here on the engineering and the product side has a significant impact on how fast these iteration loops are coming. And that's where a lot of that conversation started from, because it tells you that I'm going to be able to actually go much further than where things are going, etc. But that's what I'm trying to say. Yes, for sure. But that hasn't changed the core job of the product manager. Your job is still to lay out this plan. Your job is still to figure out what they really want. Your job is still to figure out the milestones, is still figure out the timing. If each of your iterations went from 3 years to 1 year because of AI, all the better. You're going to spend even more time in the leadership part of the job that you were supposed to do in the first place than you would do in the first one. But that's something that you should already be ready to jump in at any moment, right? Right. I want to keep this short, but this is fundamentally it. AI isn't going to change anything dramatically on the product management side of things. If you feel it's going to swallow your job, that's because you're not doing enough thought leadership as part of your job. You got to start understanding what your customers are doing and what they want to do. You got to sit down and talk to them as much as possible. Reach out to them on LinkedIn. I'm saying this, but I'm very, very bad at responding to people who want my time for this kinds of stuff because that's a bucket time that I don't have enough to allocate on. But nevertheless, try and doing it in your work environment, develop this leadership skill, etc., and then start to understand where these AI tools are going to be able to accelerate you or not. I think there's a lot of promises in here. But that's it. That's no more complicated. It's not going to change anything fundamental because the fundamental is that you as a human are the only one who really can think creatively in a thought leadership fashion. That's the thing you should already have been doing. And if you haven't, start doing it.